Alarm 2 on the alpha I power supply indicates a failure of the internal cooling fan. When the power supply faults out for a bad internal fan, the system does its best to get your attention. The power supply doesn't have direct communication with the CNC like the spindle and servo amplifiers, but the power supply, or PSM, power supply module, does talk to those units. So when the PSM has a bad fan, it tells the spindle and servo amps, and they all let the CNC know. The fan failure on the PSM is reported in 2 stages. When it first detects a fan problem, the PSM goes into a warning state, and if the fan issue hasn't self-corrected within 1 minute, it goes into an alarm state. While the PSM is in a fan warning state, the spindle and servo amps will report that they are also. Alarm DS610 is generated by the CNC when it detects that a servo amp is in the warning state. In parentheses, the alarm will indicate the axis that the amplifier controls. You will get an alarm for every axis that is fed by the offending power supply. The spindle amplifier will cause the word fan to flash in the status bar. If you have alarms occurring at the same time, you'll just see ALM for alarm flashing. While the amplifiers are in the warning state, the servo system is still powered up and technically able to move the machine around. After 1 minute, the PSM goes into the alarm state and stops working. The servo amplifiers tell the CNC they're not going to work either, and the CNC displays an SV443 alarm to pass the message to you. The SV443 alarm is the exact same one you get when a servo amp's fan truly fails, so it's important to look at everything that is happening to determine what's really bad. The spindle amplifier also sends word that it's taking a break, but it lets the CNC know it is due to the power supply. SP9059 is a spindle alarm, but in the text it says PS internal fan failure, PS for power supply. Once the system has reached this point, all the drives become not ready and the machine will not be able to move. The machine tool builder may even write an alarm that indicates there is a problem with an amplifier fan, as is the case with the EX1049 alarm shown here. With so many alarms happening on the CNC, it would be best to access the electronics cabinet with power on, safely of course, and look at the status displays of the units while the alarm is occurring. What you should expect to see is dashes on the servo amplifiers, possibly a 59 on the spindle amplifier, and a 2 on the power supply. The 59 on the spindle amp doesn't mean the spindle has a problem, it just means that the PSM doesn't talk to the CNC, so the spindle triggers an alarm anytime the power supply does in order to let you know. The motor amplifiers are in the electrical cabinet, and opening the cabinet with power applied potentially exposes you to danger. In order to accurately troubleshoot the exact cause of this alarm, you will need to have power applied to the equipment. Don't attempt to perform anything discussed in this presentation if you are not both fully qualified to do so and have the equipment owner's permission to do so. Once you are done troubleshooting and before performing any maintenance, follow all plant safety and lockout procedures. These procedures should include releasing all energies related to the maintenance procedure performed. If you put your hand over the top of the power supply, you should feel air blowing on you. There may be another fan on the heatsink that is mounted through the wall that has a different alarm. If you don't feel any air, you can be pretty confident in what the problem is. If you do feel air blowing, compare it to the other amplifiers in the machine. Is it blowing just as hard? FANUC has made the replacement of the fan easy. You don't need to remove the amplifier, you don't need any tools. If the unit is mounted right up against the top of the electrical cabinet, your experience may differ. While the DS610 alarm is displayed, the machine is still technically able to move. However, if you need to move the machine using an automatic operation, it won't happen because there is an alarm. Additionally, some ladders are written to prevent servo movement while an alarm related to the servos is occurring. Parameter 1807, bit 2, set to 1, will prevent the DS610 alarm from ever occurring. The amplifiers will still go into a warning state for 1 minute and then the alarm state. You just won't have any indication of the warning state on the screen. If you've got a bad power supply and need to move the machine, set 1807 bit 2 equal to 1, cycle the amplifier's power to clear the alarm, and then, when you power up the machine, you will have a minute to move while the amplifier is in the warning state. Once the amplifier switches to the alarm state, you will get an alarm on the screen again. Power down and power up as necessary to get the machine where you need it. The latest series of amplifiers have a diagnostic that shows you the fan speed. Since the PSM doesn't talk directly with the CNC, the diagnostics for the power supply's fan speed actually come from the servo and/or spindle amplifiers. You may ask, why does it come from both? It boils down to there being some installations where you have a power supply hooked up to servo amps without a spindle amp, or to a spindle amp but not servos. No matter what the PSM is working with, it is able to let you know it has a problem. CNC Diagnostics 1717, 1718, 1729, and 1730 report the RPM reading of the power supply internal fan. 1717 and 1718 are from the servo amplifiers, 1729 and 30 are from the spindle amplifier, or ERS if you have multiple. If the power supply only has one fan, only 2 of those 4 diagnostics will register a reading. If you don't have those diagnostics on your CNC, it just means your amplifiers are older models. The internal cooling fan and its housing lift right off of the top, and it goes back in the same way it came out. In order to get the housing out, you must squeeze these 2 tabs to release it. The fan and the housing are 2 separate parts. The part number of the fan will probably start with A90L, and chances are good the part number is printed on the fan. If it isn't, contact our part sales department, give them the part number of your power supply. It's that A06B number on the label at the top of the amp, and they'll figure it out. The yellow plastic housing can be reused unless it's physically damaged. Molded into the plastic, you'll find its part number, likely beginning with A230. On the very small power supplies, you may find the fan missing when you take the top cover off. In this case, the fan is mounted on the logic board. Remove the gray board on the front of the power supply, and you'll see the fan. Now that you have the fan out, there are a few things you can check for. Is the fan physically blocked or filthy? Cleaning it up may fix it. Try to reseat the fan module. Maybe it was a bad connection. Is the plastic that holds the fan connector in place broken? Could it be possible that the fan isn't plugging into the power supply correctly? Try reseating the gray board on the front of the power supply. If all of that fails, replace the fan. It's rare. Sometimes it's not the fan, but the amplifier itself. The logic board that you reseated can be removed, and if you have another power supply, see if you can swap that board with that other power supply. If the problem follows the board, then replace either the board or the entire power supply. Let us know if we can be of assistance. Call 888-326-8287, press 2 for CNC, and then press 2 for technical support. To reach the part sales department, press 2 for CNC, then 1 and 1 again.